You're listening to the Influential Conversations podcast with the property management coach and industry influence of the year, Kirk, Stafford, and guests. Hello again, and welcome to another in the series of Influential Conversations. My guest this morning is Mr. Nick Georges from the LJ Hooker Group and also the Atlas Property Group, which is a subsidiary, I guess you'd say, of LJ Hooker. Nick's roles, well, he's a busy guy. He's the head of property management nationally for the LJ Hooker network. Plus, also, he's the head of the Atlas Property Group, both in the sales and the property management sphere. Nick, thank you so much for your time and welcome to Influential Conversations. How are you doing?
Very, very well. Absolute pleasure, Kirk. Yeah, busy
great.
time. Very excited about having chat.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. And look, you're right. It is a very, very busy time, particularly in the industry. We're about to hit silly season with the spring listing season coming on, and obviously that brings a lot of movement. But that's a conversation, I guess, that we can touch on as we go, if you like. Nick, tell us about you. How you've been in the industry for 22 years, we were saying before.
Yeah. How
did you get into real estate, or particularly how did you get into property management?
So, like most people in the property management space, I wasn't coming through high school thinking I'm going to be a property manager or I'm going to get into the property management world. I was playing football, rep soccer, and
the other football.
Yeah, the real football. World game.
Yeah.
At the age of 18, I got injured. My father basically said to me, "You've got to get a job." This was at the end of the school. At the end of school, you've got to get a job. And my old man's a painter by trade and did a lot of work for a number of local agents in the area. And put me in touch with one of the agents, and I started my real estate journey in sales, actually. For a Genman office, if anyone.
There's a name for the past.
Genman. So I spent the first 12 months of my real estate career doing letterbox drops and putting up signboards, cork-flute signboards. And really, it was actually a really good time because a lot of the time I was doing the signboards and the letter drops. But I spent, when I wasn't out doing that, I was sort of floating around the office, getting a bit of understanding on how the sales process works, how property management worked at the time, and a bit of commercial as well. So I spent 12 to 18 months at that office really just floating. And it was sort of a really good foundation to get into the real estate industry. And 22 years later, here I am. So I think, it's a very different, I think it's a very different start to a real estate journey because I toggled between sales and property management for a good 10 to 12 years in my career. I was a selling agent. I was a property manager. I was a property officer, and sort of toggled between the two, and found a home in property management in my second office. And which I was there for 22 years in the industry. This is only my fourth place of work. So I've spent a lot of time in a lot of different places, and really found my home in property management. And I think the reason for the longevity is because I have toggled between sales and property management. I can see it I look at property management a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I think that's what we need. I think we need that different thinking because there's a lot of sameness, whether you call it cookie cutter or whatever you want to call it, but nobody's been imaginative really in the property management space. So it's starting to change now because we've got some really interesting players coming through. We've got the advent of standalone property management offices, which has been a thing over the last 20 years. But we've always, every time I hear somebody say this, I cringe because it's normally used as defensive, but we've always done it one way. We've not really looked at it differently, and we've now got the opportunity. I think COVID's helped that. We've now got the opportunity to imagine it differently. And I think that's what you're starting to do with Atlas, isn't it?
Yeah, so Atlas is part of the LJ Hooker Group, one of the three brands that are part of LJ Hooker. It's it's sort of more targeted at a bit more of a prestige marketplaces and sort of high-performing agents. We've got 2 main offices and 3 satellite offices, so 5 offices altogether, and really focused at specific marketplaces. So it's a little bit different. From a property management side of Atlas, I had a chance to come into the business and really start something from scratch.
Yep.
At the time, which was 4 years ago now, when we launched Atlas Property, or 5 years ago, sorry, when we launched Atlas Property Management, I did the whole research on which platform we're going to go into and what kind of service levels are we going to provide. And I think that often gets talked about when people start a property management business, but more often than not, they just fall into the cookie cutter kind of style of office. And I had a chance to start something really special. And at the time, it was very, very well received by the marketplace. I think that's something that I did have in my advantage in the Lower North Shore, Sydney. And we started a property management business with a trustless property management platform, a very personalised service, because a lot of the mundane property management tasks were automated.
Good.
Over the past 5 years, it's a really exciting time for property management at the moment with all the new tech and a lot of these property management only businesses bringing in a lot of offshoring and really, it's a really interesting space for, like you said, a lot of big offices are going into the have been cookie cutter mode for 10 or 15 years. There's some platforms and things that you can do right now in the property management space that have huge efficiencies and obviously can increase your ROI at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right. Look, I see new tech. I get a demo of a new platform probably once a week.
Yeah.
And some of it's really exciting. I look at some of it and go, pardon me, years ago I'd be going, oh, no, we can't, we've got no room for that in the industry, those sorts of things. I'm very closed off to it. But I think over the last probably 10 years or so, my mind sort of expanded out to go, well, it's not just one way of doing things. And we don't have to be doing every task. Like you said, a lot of the repetitive stuff, if you can automate that or offshore it, you actually make your PM's job a lot easier. And I'm seeing new stuff coming up, and it's just bloody exciting. And some of the stuff that's coming through, and some of the stuff we've seen. I mean, we've had about, someone said we had 7 years worth of tech since this whole mess started 3.5 years ago. We've had 7 years worth of tech adapted and adopted in that amount of period.
Yeah.
So we're now into the next iteration, that next generation that wasn't supposed to be around for another 3, 4, 5 years.
And I think this is the real, over the next 2 to 3 years, is a real sweet spot for property management. I have a look at multiple businesses we've got 400 offices in the group, over 400 offices in the group, and you see the ones who are the early adopters and the ones that are really open to the technology and open to being able to pivot really quickly on something that would fit their style of business. And it's, like I said, it's a really exciting time because I think the thing in property management over the past, forever, has been the property manager is everything to everyone. So they're the maintenance expert, they're the investment expert, and at times they're the psychologist for the landlord, the tenant, and especially now in the current climate with what's happening across the country, which is, but I think
you left out referee as well.
Yeah, exactly. I really think the key to a successful property management business moving forward is to put the right person in the right seat. So getting that property manager, I think with all the tech and all the fantastic stuff that we've got happening in the space, the relationship is still number one, both with the landlord and the tenant. If you can find that person to manage that relationship and build that relationship and plug in the tech around that person, whether it be offshoring or platforms or whatever it is, that is the way forward to run a successful, profitable property management business. Yep. Finding that person to manage the relationship, and a lot of the other stuff you can outsource. and plug in. It's
exactly.
that relationship. That's why we're seeing a lot of the best people in property management are coming from different industries.
Yep.
Who aren't sort of tarnished by what's happened over the past 20, 25 years, where the burnout and the people leaving the industry after 6 or 12 months. And so a fresh set of eyes coming in. It's a really exciting space.
Yeah, you're right. And some of the best people I've seen have come from, pardon me, from hospitality, or some of the really, really good ones have come from highly systemized, dare I say it, fast food enterprises, because they understand process. You know, you make your burger this way.
Yeah.
The same as we do in PM. We do things like this. You know, there is a process that we follow. The reason it's a process that we follow is because we know that it works.
Yeah.
We can always improve it, but you know, we do it this way because we've tried every other way, or we've tried the ways that we can think of. We've tried going off on tangents, and we just keep it very simple, and that's the way it goes. You know, part A goes into part B, goes into part C, and then you fold over to part D, or something, you know, along those lines. But it is, and you're right, it's that relationship customer service aspect that I think, you know, we are really pretty darn good at in most cases, even though we've got, you know, get canned from time to time because it doesn't always work, but nothing ever does.
Yeah.
But if you look at the areas outside of our industry, you know, or the other sectors, you know, there's some amazing innovations coming through in customer service. There's some amazing things coming through in terms of just our provision of service to our clients. And we've got to be open to exploring those and where there's a benefit, implementing.
Yeah, I think the key is, well, you touched on it earlier, Kurt. It's we're not performing open heart surgery or splitting. Like it's not rocket science what we're doing. There's a lot of our job is a lot of property the task in the property management world are systemized. There's only a certain way you can do a really good ingoing inspection or routine inspection, and that kind of stuff is very process driven. And that's why the emphasis does need to be on the person that's managing the relationship. I think that's the key part of running a successful PM business. And like I said, plugging in all the fantastic tech and offshoring things that we've got going on at the moment, allowing that relationship manager to just manage the relationship. And then, I mean, you always hear of how many properties does a property manager max out at, and that number, you can debate it to the hills, but it doesn't actually, that number is irrelevant. It's what tasks is that person performing? And if that person is only performing the relationship building tasks, that number could be 100, it could be 400.
Yeah, that's right.
Depends what support is around them. So, and that's sort of where it's heading. And like I said earlier, the automation, some of the fantastic. I mean, you said you get one a week, or asking you to come and look at demos. I think you probably get 2 a day coming to me with. I think there's over. Can't remember the exact figure, but it's something over 700 or 800 prop tech platforms in the real estate space. And I know you can't implement all of them, but as a leader in a business, you should allocate some time to look into some of these platforms. And they're not all going to be right for your business, but some of them can create huge efficiencies, not only for your property management team, but for your clients as well, which is as equally as important. I put the team looking after the investments just as important as the landlord experience, just as important as the tenant experience. And that creates a really great ecosystem for the property management space in your business. And that also plugs in the sales team, the support team around you. You have to look at it holistically. It's not just one or the other. That's right.
Yeah. But you mentioned a minute ago. It's if it's good for one, it's generally good across the board. It'll flow through, because if you're we say before, if your PM team's properly supported, if your clients have got a good experience as well, and anyone who's heard me before will know that I don't differentiate between landlords and tenants as clients, because they're both, they're both central to the relationship. So every time you're managing a relationship with one or the other, you're actually also managing the other relationship as well. And if you've got to have those communication skills very, very much on point. And our job, really, when you think about it, is all about communication. It's all about building that relationship. Yeah. It's even, I know this conversation has come up from time to time, and I think you and I have touched on it before in some of our convos. We call ourselves property managers, but that's really a misnomer, because we're not managing the property. The property's static.
Yeah.
It doesn't need management. It's the people that we manage. It's the relationships that we manage. And that all comes down to ease of communication. And if you've got that working well, everything will flow from there.
I think you talk about the relationship, which is the key part of it. I think not only just property management, it's the key element in all business across multiple sectors. If you've got the relationship with landlord, tenant, customer, client, tradesmen, salespeople, it's everything comes back to the relationship, and the key is the communication. And when you talk about communication, that's when you can start to bring in all these other things. Like the tech piece, and all the other external things that plug into our business can assist with the tech. Can assist with the communication and the relationship. No matter how much tech we've got and how many other systems and programs we're plugged in my opinion, nothing beats picking up the phone and having a conversation, or having a coffee with a landlord, or getting them into the office. It just solidifies that relationship even further. And we all talk about sort of proactive conversations and things like that. All of that comes off the back of having the right systems, processes, and people. And then all that other stuff will flow on from there.
Yep, absolutely right. And I've just made a very quick note as we were talking. It's what I think I'll probably head this episode up. The key is communication, and you're right. To me, there's never been any substitute to an in-person conversation. Emails and text messages can only convey a message. They're basically, at the end of the day, they're a bunch of dots on a screen. They've got no personality, no warmth, no tone to them. And you still get people that will be upset by the tone of your email. It's just what that is probably you people, and we all do it. We'll bash out an email in 30 seconds where we should have taken 20 minutes to think on it first, and all of a sudden it comes across as completely different to picking up the phone and going, "Hey Nick, it's Kirk. This is what's going on," and all of a sudden you've got a problem that's been resolved before it becomes a problem.
But quite often, especially in the PM space, where you see, I might get a call from a property manager saying, "I've got this huge problem. It's going to go to tribunal, yada yada yada." And you go into the office, or you have a look at the correspondence, and you see email after email that's just paragraph after paragraph. And I look at it, and it just, your head just starts spinning. And my initial reaction to that is, just pick up the phone, ring the. I don't care how irate someone is. If you pick up the phone and just have a conversation, or ask them to come to the office, and just a lot of the time when you read those really long-winded emails, there's no substance to it. It's just a vent. It's just a vent. You're sitting there after a hard day's work. No one knows what's going on in people's lives. There's a lot of personal stuff going on for everyone. It's just dumped into an email where you can pick up a conversation and say, "I understand you might be upset about XYZ. I understand. How are we going to move? What do you want, and how can we move forward with this? And
how can we resolve this?
How can we resolve it? I'm here to assist you with resolving it." I think one of the key things that I try and communicate to anyone that I speak to in the property management space, it's not on us. We are the messenger here. We are the conduit between the landlord and the tenant, and we will advise where we can. Ultimately, we're not making the decision. And I think that's something that during COVID, I think that's something a lot of people in the PM space struggled with. They felt they had irate landlords and irate tenants, and it was a very difficult time for a lot of people. Trying to remove yourself from the crossfire is a bit of an art in itself. I think that's something that people need to, in the PM space, should look at really closely and take a step back.
That's right.
Have a look at the facts and then try and navigate the situation.
Yeah, spot on. And remove, you said it there, remove yourself, but also remove the personality, because it's really, we're the holder of a lot of knowledge, and it's up to us to try to, to try to communicate that. But as you said, we're not the decision maker. All we're doing is passing on the information. One of the things that I was talking about at a conference a couple of weeks ago was, here's the problem, here are our options, this is our recommendation. What do you think the solution should be? Because these are the likely effects of each of these options on you and on the other side. So where do you think we should go with this? And when you start becoming collaborative with it, rather than saying, well, this is just the way it's going to be, which is the old approach from the 80s, probably the 90s and into the early 2000s as well. When you present someone with no option, well, of course, it's the same. If we get presented with something that we just said, well, you've got no choice, you've got to do this, what are we going to do? We're going to be resistant.
Yeah.
So
you need to be able to pivot. I think in any form of business or in any kind of transaction, I think the most successful people, the ones that can pivot and try and, or even be open in the communication. Like if you can say there needs to be a little bit of give and take from both parties. If both parties feel like they've had a win, then you can generally resolve the issue. There's obviously exceptions to that rule at times, and I've seen that over the years, and I'm sure everyone listening has as well. But most of the time, you can generally resolve things with a little bit of give and take, and generally people want to move on. They don't want to sit there and have a really long-winded tribunal hearing or go through the courts or. So you can generally resolve it by just getting them in and getting. I often used to get both parties in the office, landlord and tenant. At times it would get heated, but a lot of the times you'd be able to resolve it before that, because that's what they do in the tribunal. You end up sitting in mediation. Why not try and resolve that and save yourself the time and to go to the tribunal and try to resolve something, or even worse, having it heard by a member and then it's completely out of your control.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then you're really throwing yourself on the attitude of the adjudicator, whichever setting you're in, to deal with it. Because if we keep control of something, if we keep control of the conversation, we're going to be a lot further advanced, or be able to advance further than we would, as you said, in a tribunal or in a mediation.
And I'd say that to both clients. I'd say we can come up with a resolution here, the three of us, we're all sitting in a room, or we can pass the decision to someone else, and we will not have any control over.
That's right.
Yeah. So quite often, or not quite often, generally all the time is the best thing to do is to just be really open and transparent with all parties and try and come up with a resolution.
Yep, absolutely. Spot on. Nick, challenges. We've all faced them. Yes. What do you see within your remit with Hookers and also with Atlas? Where do you see most property managers facing their greatest challenges outside of communication?
I think the challenge is, the biggest challenge is what I mentioned earlier, the property managers being everything to everyone. I think they, like I said, they're the psychologist, the maintenance expert, the tech expert, the investment expert, the mortgage expert. That a lot of them, and a lot of it's the pressure. The pressure's put on themselves. Business owners need to understand that they need to support their PMs and put them in the right seats. So the senior property manager, because what quite often happens is the property manager leaves and the property officer is the next person up, and they get thrown into that role without the proper training, without the proper experience. And 6 or 8 months later, that person's overwhelmed, under pressure, and exits the industry. You see it every. And there's the old notion, or not the old notion, but the average lifespan of a property manager at the moment is 8 or 9 months, which is it's really concerning. But the ones that have got the right systems and processes and support around them, quite often you see them thriving in their role. I was at a business last week who have 2,500 managements, and the property manager, the relationship manager, that's all they do. They just manage the relationship with the landlord. That's all they do. And they've got a whole support team around them who do all the administration work, and then they've got people, field officers who are doing ingoings and outgoings and routines and showing properties. The sole role of the property manager is to manage that relationship.
Yep, that's right.
And I think that's the biggest challenge, is because property management has been such a "this is how we've always done it" attitude. Yeah. That's across Australia. It's I think the sooner we can start to pivot and understand that just because you've done it like that doesn't mean that's going to work over the next 5 or 10 years, and it's not, and it's not going to be profitable. So the way that property management's moving is moving into the tech space, is moving into the outsourcing space, and there's really a relationship building business, and all the others look after itself.
Yep, that's right. And you're spot on, because I was out talking yesterday to a firm in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and they've got about 3,000 properties under management. Some of their staff have been with them. He said the average is about 4 years, but some of his staff have been with him for 11, 12, 13 years. And that's because they're properly supported. They've got all the tech platforms that they need. They've got VAs. They're completely paperless. They can operate from any one of the offices that they've got, and the whole thing just runs seamlessly. And I just looked at that and I thought that's a really good, solid business run by someone who's got the right ideas behind supporting the teams, and also is looking at tech all the time, because one of the things that we were talking about was the tech stack that they've got. And he's talking about programs and platforms that I haven't even come across yet. You're right. I think there's about 800 pieces of property technology as platforms, as apps, as software iterations around at the moment. I think that's gone up by 2/3 on what it was 5 years ago. So,
and it's only going to get better and better and better for us as leaders in this space, because, like I said earlier, it's not every bit of tech is going to suit your business. There are pieces of tech that are absolute gold that don't take too much to implement into your business. And I think you talk about those career property managers, I call them, the ones that have been in there 10, 12, 15 years. A lot of them are set in their ways. But one of the things that's held them in good stead for that long period of time is their ability to build relationships, and an educational piece for them around how this new wave of tech and can benefit them and their business, I think is the key. So ensure, like, if you've got a property manager that's been in your business for 12 years and is set in their ways, as a business owner or a business leader, they should be sitting in any sort of demo or tech that you've got, because these companies that are selling this tech can sell it to these people a lot better than you can as a business leader.
Oh, for sure.
They understand it. They can actually sell the benefit to that property manager, as opposed to a business leader who can come in and say, they might be across the tech space, but they can come in and say, "Oh, we're putting in this new piece of tech. You've got to get buy-in from your team before you start implementing this tech, because they're the ones that need to use it. And if you don't, it can very quickly unravel."
Yep, true. Because if they're only using it as part of its capacity, or they're resistant to using it before, like I was saying before, if you present someone with one option, we're doing this, well, yes, there's going to be resistance to it. But if you've got people there that can show them benefit, show them how it's going to save them time, how it's going to save them overwhelm, which both of which lead to a reduction in their stress levels, who wouldn't be going, okay, I'll put my hand up for that?
Yeah. It's time. Time is the big one. So all the tech is built to provide more time for the property manager to do the dollar productive. It's very similar to a really high level salesperson or an EBU. Lead salesperson in that team, generally in the prestige space or in the high performing space, are generally only doing the dollar productive things. So signing up agency agreements and closing deals. They're the two tasks that they're doing, and then the team around them are doing all the listing presentation, documentation, the comparable sales, booking in the open houses, all the other tasks involved with running a successful sales team are done. But the lead agent is only doing the dollar productive things, and that should be taken. We should take a leaf out of that in the property management space, where the property manager should only be doing the dollar productive things, which are building the relationship with the landlord, and all the other stuff around it can be done by other members of that team, whether they're virtual assistants or other members of the team on the ground.
Or whether it's a platform. Because as we were talking, this entire conversation has been about two things, communication and technology, and this is exactly right. This is where they meld into each other. Yeah. Because if you can automate, do it.
Absolutely.
Really. Because it's
a
time saving. It's a time saving. And look, the amount of cost involved that I've seen with a lot of these pieces of tech is minimal. It's going to save us replacing people, because that's the biggest cost in any business. We're going to be a mile in front from a profitability point of view.
And that property manager relationship with the landlord, there are so many things that we can offer from a property manager's perspective, from an investment specialist perspective. If you're talking to the landlord about building the relationship, are you talking to them about tax depreciation? Are you talking to them about refinancing their investment loans, or not going into detail, but putting them in touch with people that specialize in that space? I think that's where a very good property manager or investment manager, when you're trying to build a relationship, you've got to offer them something from a business. What is your point of difference as a property management business? Do you have a mortgage broker that you can put them in touch with? Do you have someone in tax depreciation? There's a whole bunch of different offshoots to property management, where ultimately you buy an investment property to build wealth. Are you doing everything in your power as a property manager to try and increase your landlord's bottom line? Because that's why people buy investment properties.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like I said, accountants, mortgage brokers, insurance specialists, depreciation schedules, financial planners, estate advisors, through whether it's solicitors, whatever. There's half of us, and we hardly even sort of given it much thought. But you're right. We've got a role to play as an advisor, as well as managing the relationship between the two parties. And the same can be said for a lot of the tenants, because a lot of the tenants are, they're not all, just starting out, kids out of uni or anything along those lines. I've dealt over time with some very, very high net worth individuals who've chosen to rent, or who are renting whilst homes are being built, renovated, or anything along those lines. So our marketplace is as diverse as we choose to look at it as.
And with the tenant side, paying rent, when people are looking at loans, you can paying rent can go towards getting a loan. They actually look at that. If you've got a really good tenant ledger, that can go towards, this person's been paying $600 a week for the last 18 months. They can afford to pay, and they've got enough affordability to pay X, Y, Z, and that can actually put you in good stead. Most tenants don't even know that. So you put the tenants in charge. That's why things like when people talk about client nights in the property management space, are you inviting your tenants to that? I'd be inviting my tenants to that as well, because
most PMs would be too afraid.
Yeah, there's a database of tenants there that in the next 6, 12, or 18 months are going to be probably looking at purchasing investment property. And if their experience has been good with the office and they buy in the same marketplace, there's no reason why they shouldn't be coming to you.
That's right. Exactly.
So, I actually said that at a meeting this morning at this office. They're doing a client night, and I said, "Are you inviting the tenants?"
What was the response?
There was a bit of umming and ahhing, but it's the average rent in this marketplace, I think, for this office is about $2,000 a week. So it's people that are paying $2,000 a week. I bet you bottom dollar most of those tenants have some kind of investment property somewhere. So it's just taking a different approach and lens, and being very inclusive. I think a lot of the times the tenants don't get the service levels that should be produced across the entire business. It's the same with with vendors and buyers. I think everyone needs to be on the same playing field, and there's opportunities everywhere. There's opportunities everywhere to build business, to make an impact on your marketplace, and to change people's lives. That's one of the things I've always said. Like, whether you're buying, selling, renting, we're in the position where we're changing people's lives, moving families from home to home, putting people in their first home, assisting people with buying their first investment properties, managing their biggest assets. These are all big ticket items in people's lives.
Yeah, that's right. And we're the ones at the forefront of it.
We're the ones driving that. It's a really important job that we're facing. People always say, "Oh, I'm just a property manager." You're not just a property manager.
No such thing.
Quite often, the property managers looking after $100, $150, $200 million worth of properties across their portfolio. That's a big deal. That's a huge portfolio, and something that you should be proud of.
Yep, that's right. And and I've said this countless times to people. Don't look at the one property. Look at the quantum. Look at everything that you're doing in that portfolio of properties, and the number of lives and the number of conversations you have, the lives that you touch, and you realise then you start going, oh, okay, well, it's not. And you said before, you're not just a property manager, because that covers the range of things that we've just been discussing. That's probably a really good place to end this. Nick, I'm really deeply appreciative of your time coming on, because we've actually gone over. We've been talking. I try to keep these to about 30 minutes. We're now coming up to 40. So it's just been one of those really nice, engaging conversations. I really, really do thank you for your time. Nick Georges, Atlas Property Group and head of LJ Hooker Property Management nationally. Again, thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, Kirk.
You've been listening to another podcast in the Influential Conversations series. This series is proudly brought to you by Tappy, helping property managers deliver a world-class maintenance experience to their landlords and tenants, and providing a total property care solution. Inspection Express, the market leader in property inspection reporting and digital signature property documentation, giving you a seamless approach to the way that you manage properties. And Agent Dynamics, the Australian market-leading team development ecosystem to help you nurture, grow and retain your property teams since 2014. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next time for the next in this series.